Hey, welcome into the Lowdown, where we talk about everything aviation defense, things that have been happening over the last week or so. If you're not a newsletter subscriber, make sure you grab the link down below and you can sign up for the newsletter. It's absolutely free. You won't get spam. Get it every week or so with a full breakdown of things that are happening around the world. Again, if you like aviation defense, check it out. If not, skip it. So that being said, let's jump into this week's edition. It's definitely a busy week. We got a Navy SEAL operation that failed in North Korea, the 500 F-35 being delivered to the United States, and a whole slew of other things. So let's first jump into this failed Navy SEAL mission that occurred in North Korea. Now, this occurred in 2019, and in fact, on the Lowdown news channel, we do a breakdown video where we kind of dive into what we know. It's coming out on open source. Obviously, this one did not end well. It was a failed mission. Civilian North Korean fishermen apparently were killed because they stumbled upon these Navy SEALs that were planting a listening device on a fiber optic cable. This is all in the lead up to the North Korean and U.S. nuclear talks back in 2019. Now, there was a summit in 2018 and then two in 2019, which didn't yield any positive results other than a handshake and a thumbs up. And then North Korea just launching more ICBMs than they had ever launched in years prior. But nonetheless, if you're curious about that, there is a video over on the Lowdown YouTube channel where you can dig in a little bit deeper for that. So again, not where you want to be, and it didn't end well. All right, over to the KC-46. We've covered this on the Lowdown multiple times over the last year and a half or so. Now, the KC-46 has been plagued with issues from the very beginning. And I mean, it might be setting a record for the longest procurement process to get a full up round of an aircraft. Now, it is out there doing the mission, and that is probably with air quotes from KC-135 and KC-10. That was from back in the day, but it's out there doing air refueling. It's forward deployed, but it's had multiple issues, predominantly around the refueling system. So the boom operator no longer sits in the tail of the aircraft. They're using a remote vision sensor. They're up in the cockpit using a TV-like screen. Well, this system has been plagued with issues. Now, if you've been following along, there have been a number of issues with the boom breaking off or significant damage being done to either the KC-46 and or the receiver over the last couple of years, one of which being an Australian F-18 Super Hornet that had over $14 million in damage done to it where the boom sliced the cockpit. So they're now identifying at least 3 mishaps over the last 18 months or so that are all directly related to the KC-46 boom issue. Not included in this, from what we can tell, is the F-22 that had the boom issue about a month and a half ago. That could have been a result of the F-22 receiver or the KC-46. But right now, it doesn't look like the track record for the KC-46 and its remote vision system is just knocking it out of the park. I'm sure we'll learn more, and we'll probably see more about the KC-46 and similar type issues, as time marches on here. All right, over to one leg of the nuclear triad for the United States, and that is our ICBMs, the missile silos. This is part of a long upgrade and expensive upgrade process the Air Force is undergoing, upgrading its Minuteman IIIs to the Sentinel program. I think I just butchered that name, but neither here nor there. So the Minuteman III, they've been sitting alert for decades. And part of this is to upgrade the nuclear ICBM program of the United States. It's a multi-billion-dollar program, which is doubled in cost and actually triggered the Nunn-McCurdy Act, which once a certain defense program goes over a threshold, it forces a review to determine should we continue, change it, or eliminate it. Now, originally, the Sentinel program was designed for about a $77 billion upgrade. Now, some have it estimated around $160 billion for just the initial investment, which over the lifespan, it could be upwards of $400 billion to maintain this. The game plan out the door was to upgrade these original Minuteman III silos, and now it's looking like just building all new silos together. And I've heard former Secretary of the Air Force talk about this a little bit. Things you didn't have to worry about in the 1960s and 70s, where a lot of these ICBMs are placed out in the middle of nowhere. Well, now they're no longer the middle of nowhere, or between the middle of nowhere and these silos, you now have big developments in towns. So you can imagine the eminent domain issues, buying land, running fiber optic cables from silo 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so on and so forth. That problem set is just much more complex today, much more expensive, and they just didn't face it back in the 60s and 70s, and now it's rearing its ugly heads. The original plan was to have these things online in 2029. Now they're saying 2031. I wouldn't be surprised if we see further setbacks as This week, they've just shut down the first Minuteman III silo to stand this up, decertifying that one. In the end, the plan for this new ICBM program is to procure 634 missiles, with about 400 of them deployed and another 25 or so held back for development and testing. And while we're talking about nuclear triad, China had a big Victory Day parade, which intention of breaking that down in the next week or so. But they unveiled the DF-61. This is an ICBM, which appears to be a follow-on to the DF-41. It is a road mobile. This thing has, if you're watching or a newsletter subscriber, you can see a picture of it, at least 16 wheels. It's massive. Now, this would be part of Beijing's goal of having a nuclear triad or completing their full nuclear triad. Well, this thing is definitely massive. We solved this problem having the unknown with nuclear submarines carrying nuclear warheads. Again, there's unknown. You don't know where they're going to be. And this thing, obviously, could just be roaming the countryside, although it does look like it would need a stout road system to support it. All right, this one I found interesting, with Greek F-16s intercepting Turkish F-16s over territorial disputes. Now, this is something that's gone on since the beginning of time, nonetheless. But what I didn't know, and I did learn that in past incidents, they had a Mirage 2000 shoot down of a Turkish F-16 and then a midair collision in 2006, resulting in fatalities there. Now, the F-16 that was shot down was a D model. I don't want to make light of that because anytime you lose a D model, I mean, just a single tier. But unfortunately, the pilot was killed. The Wizzo did make it out of that incident, according to reports there. But it is weird just seeing F-16s going F-16s. And it didn't make this newsletter, but the Venezuelan F-16s overflying U.S. naval ships, that one's probably going to be interesting as we see that one develop over the next few weeks nonetheless. So we'll have to dive into that just a little bit as well. All right, if you're a trivia person, question of the day, how many nations are part of the F-35 program as of 2025? Is it 12, 15, 19, or 21? Check out the newsletter to participate and or find out the answer. All right, the United States Air Force has welcomed its 500th F-35A. The model going to the Marine Corps, as well as the C model now, and the C model predominantly designated just for the Navy carrier variant there. But the 120th Fighter Wing in Jacksonville, Florida, accepted its third F-35 as it is transitioning away from the F-15C and D, which we talked about last time as well. Barnes Air National Guard saying goodbye to the F-15 by the end of this fiscal year. At least that's the last plan that I heard. Who knows? That could change there. But currently, Lockheed's developed and delivered over 1,100 F-35s in just the last few years, which is impressive. We will have some Block 4 updates because, again, after this newsletter came out, shockingly, there are updates to the Block 4 upgrade of the F-35, that full beast mode that's going to face even more delays coming down the pipe. But right now, the F-35A being flown in guard units in Vermont, Montgomery, Alabama, Madison, Wisconsin, and Jacksonville. And then Barnes is next up on the list. Yeah, and we'll see. There'll be more as we transition away from the mighty F-16 and F-15, more F-35s. Again, as I mentioned, China had their Victory Day parade, and this corresponded to the surrendering of Japan for World War II. They unveiled a bunch of aircraft as well as unmanned combat aerial vehicles, UCAVs, signaling, again, massive strides when it comes to development with prototypes. Again, long road between a prototype and actually something that is combat ready, deliverable, reproducible, etc. But they're unveiling a lot of things, and the parade was no different. In fact, they did have their J-20, which we've talked about, all variants flying together, as well as the J-35. That's their latest fifth-generation fighter, their naval variant. And just because it's fun, I'll say it looks like the F-35, and there's going to be definitely comments about that. But it has 2 engines. Other than that, it looks oddly like an F-35. So go ahead and scream into your keyboard if you're on YouTube. And then a quick snapshot section here, and these are just some highlights of things going on. The Pentagon has awarded $1.74 billion to BAE for their Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. These are the rockets. Rockets have become really popular among fighters in the last few years. Being able to guide them with lasers has made them very precise, very accurate, relatively low cost, despite the $1.74 billion, but very effective there. So we'll keep seeing more of that. South Korean troops have fired warning shots at North Korean soldiers who briefly crossed the DMZ. In the newsletter, I do have a link to this. So Russia, it's pretty wild. We'll go ahead and pull it up here. This is off Instagram, but Russian airstrikes with hypersonic missiles and Duran-3 drones slamming into the capital of Kyiv. This was about 5 or 6 days ago. It killed 16 people and injured 48 more. But again, it's a pretty wild video. We have an ex-MD Anderson researcher, Yuhan Lee, was arrested in Houston for attempting to smuggle 50 to 90 gigabytes of U.S.-funded breast cancer research and vaccine research to China. So, everything is up for grabs when it comes to the Chinese trying to steal it. NORAD intercepted a Russian Il-20 reconnaissance aircraft in the Alaskan ADIZ on August 24th with F-16s and E-3s. And we did post about it because it does happen. Actually, it is here too. A Russian fighter intercepted a P-8 Poseidon with an advanced AN/APS-154 radar off Crimea. And then we did have in last week's newsletter the RC-135 flying around Shanghai, so we do it as well. The U.S. has secretly approved, and secretly, that's actually dramatic. That shouldn't be in there, but has approved 3,300 extended range attack munitions to Ukraine. It wouldn't be a secret if it was in the newsletter. With first deliveries scheduled in October, and they require a lot of Pentagon oversight for their usage there. That's kind of how the theme of that war goes. U.S. approved a $103 million sale of 96 AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles to NATO allies, including Belgium, Italy, Romania, and this is just going to boost their F-35 capability. It was funny in the comments. I don't know if you'll find it, but it's linked there. I think Belgium's getting 8 of them, and like one Belgian citizen's like, all right, I'm Belgium. What are we going to do with 8 missiles? Now, the 9X is a very capable missile. I don't know what their full inventory is going to be, but as you might imagine, you can quickly go through these. And we've talked about this before. We've been slinging a lot of multi-million-dollar missiles at $30,000 drones for the past couple of years. A pretty expensive habit to be involved with, and you can go through them pretty quick. So takes a while to build them, very costly. 8 missiles is probably not going to do you a whole lot. And here's the last piece of the snapshot. This is a first, at least that I've heard of it. The United States Air Force has inked a deal with Italy to train its first batch of U.S. Air Force pilot training students in Sardinia and the T-346 Alpha, making the first time initial U.S. Air Force pilot training has occurred in a NATO partner facility. Now, we have Euro-NATO joint jet pilot training in Texas at Shepherd Air Force Base, where NATO partners come over and train. Additionally, at every one of our pilot training bases, we have upwards of 50 partner nations that we train those students. Like I've taught students from Afghanistan, Iraq, Nigeria, Pakistan, India. They all come over and train with us. We put them through the exact syllabus, more or less, as U.S. Air Force students. Now, again, the Air Force pilot training pipeline it has gone under drastic changes, and that is an understatement, over the last 7 or 8 years. We've talked about it on the podcast. Who knows what it'll be like, but this is a first, and it's fairly significant in my opinion. All right, as we wrap up here today, if you're curious, we have the thread of the day in each and every newsletter. This week, it's a DF-61, which was unveiled this past week. Some say, again, a improvement upon the DF-41 ICBM that has been around for a little bit. Road mobile, part of the nuclear triad, nuclear strategic delivery capability there. And there's a few more details in there, as well as the answer to the question of the day. So if you're curious and you like this type of content, I encourage you to click the link down below, grab the newsletter. I'll see you next week.